Okay, people. So I am joined by Stephen Farah, the writer and producer of Beyond Existence. Stephen,
Oh,
thank you for joining me. I appreciate it, man.
thank you so much. Thanks for having me, Kevin.
No worries, man. Yeah, your film is currently doing the festival circuit. How's all of that feeling?
Yeah, pretty good. Like, it's exciting. We just finished Boston Sci-Fi Film Festival, and we're about to screen at Miami International Sci-Fi Film Festival. So, yeah, it's exciting. It seems to be getting received quite well. So, yeah,
Oh,
it
that's
does.
good. Yeah, Boston's a great little festival. Those people are good people, man. So
Yeah,
yeah, it must
definitely.
have been a good time with that. And like, how is it now? Because are you going to the festivals? Because it was a bit tough on all of these filmmakers the last few years, just having to do everything virtually. But are you able to start getting out there?
Unfortunately for this next one, Miami, I'm not able to go, but our director, Schuman Hoque, is going over there. So he is flying out to Miami next week to the festival. But yeah, the pandemic definitely did slow things down massively. Boston, our screening was a virtual one. It wasn't an in-person one where Miami is
Right.
in person. So yeah.
Okay, man. So how did this whole thing get going? Right? Yeah, when did you write the thing? Did you come up with the concept, or is it through a conversation? Like, how did you know, Beyond Existence come to life?
Well, it's quite a weird one. It's a bit of a long one where we were trying to do a bigger budget feature film. I'm with Schuman Hoque and Claire Farah and myself. Claire's the other producer on it, and we'd been trying to push a bigger feature film for a while. But this was quite a few years back, and all the investors we'd been going to had been saying, "Oh, you guys don't have the experience behind you to do a film of this budget yet." So Schumann and myself sat down and we decided, well, let's make a low budget film and let's make it like a road trip film. And then I went off and wrote it. And originally it was going to be set in America and the budget was going to be pretty low. And we managed to raise some of the money but couldn't close it all. So we thought, well, actually, one, we shoot it in Spain, a bit like a spaghetti western, where it can look like America, and it would mean our budget could be less. And we did that, and we raised some money again, and again we couldn't close all the funds, and then we just thought, let's do it in the UK, and we'll put a little bit of money in ourselves and try pull in all the favors we could. So that's kind of like the journey of how the film came into being, and that why we ended up making it. But I think the big thing for me also is it's always having a really strong, compelling story. Like it's got to be a strong story that drives it, that people are interested in. So it sits in the kind of art house realm, but also in the commercial realm, where if you're into sci-fi, you should love the film. So yeah.
Mm. And does the location did it really affect the story, or was it more of a just a mental situation where you'd envisioned it being one place and then you had to change it, but technically it could be in any country?
Yeah, I guess technically it could be anywhere. I guess the locations, it was the dialogue was quite American, so a lot of like
Right.
Americanisms in the way people spoke, and it gave more scale to like and the landscape when we were describing it in the script, and how that changed,
Hmm.
and then it was like, well, it's in Britain, so we make sure everybody kind of speaks of a similar way. Like our professor in it's Scottish, the main our main star Ellen, she's also English, so everybody's kind of got those kind of accents. But I think the story is universal, so it doesn't necessarily feel like, okay, this is the UK. It's probably some of the shots around it where they're in their car and they're driving and you see some like British landscapes, or it's looking quite cloudy and things like that. It didn't feel like desert,
Yeah.
obviously, but like as far as the story goes, I mean, it's a very similar story. It was more so, I think our worry was if they're going to be in a car all day and they're driving, then you can essentially drive from one end of the UK to the other end of the UK. So what's their journey like, where they're going? So we thought, well, actually they're going to key places, so that's why their journey's taking a long time, and they're
Mm,
stopping in places. So the time in the car's not, it's obviously like the majority of the day, but at the same time they're stopping in places. And I don't think, if people are stopping to go, this journey's taking too long, and they're in England or whatever, then obviously then they're not getting carried away in the story. And I think we failed as filmmakers if they're getting carried into the story. I don't think there's anything to go like, this is England or wherever. There's no real reference where we go like, okay, we're going to this area of England. But if you know some of the places and you're a filmmaker, there's certain locations that you'd be like, oh, I recognize that. That's Bentwaters, where a lot of people do some filming. So I think that's the only giveaway, really.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And was it disheartening when you couldn't get the bigger budget film going? Because, like, what was the thing that kind of kept you moving and being like, look, we can't do that yet, but we could do this?
Yeah, it was quite, I think it was quite disheartening along the way, where we'd managed to raise some money, and then when you raised some money, you're like, okay, that's it, it's happening. But then it's like trying to close the remaining money, and then when that doesn't happen, and you get to a point where you go, well, actually, this is not happening. Um, but I think the way the team works is we're very much like, well, we got to make something. We need to make a feature film. We've been speaking about making a feature film. Our bigger feature film we couldn't make. We got to make this. And then it got to that point where we're like, well, what can we do to make sure that it happens? And then we were like, well, we'll pull in all our favors. So it was just, there were definitely disheartening things along the way, but I think the ambition and the drive kept us going the whole time. And now obviously completing it, there's a big payoff to having all of that and going, oh, it was really worthwhile. But the whole experience, like throughout making it, their ups and downs, where you're going, well, we've only got 12 days to shoot this film. And that's quite disheartening, where you go, if one day messes up, you're not going to have a
Mm,
movie anymore. And then when it went into post-production, it was the same, where we go, we had a really good animator on board, but then because it was like almost no pay and they got a much bigger job, they couldn't work on it anymore. And then we're
yeah.
going, well, we've got 400 VFX shots in this. How are we going to do this film? How we've shot it? How are we going to finish it? So there were constant steps along the way. We were like, okay, this is disheartening, but I think we drove through it and kept ourselves going. So.
Yeah. So, what were some of the things that you utilize to overcome these hurdles? Because obviously you know what I mean, you did what you set out to do, but yeah, as approaching this thing, like, how did you think, fuck, how do we get over the animation, and how do we maintain this story within just this short period of time to shoot?
I think, like, some of the things, I mean, besides from more vague of like, oh, we were obviously driven and we wanted to do it, we pulled on our experience. So, like, the three of us, Claire, Schuman, and myself, we all kind of come from the branded content, advertising, commercial world. So we know a lot about production and how to make like films, and we're used to making like 5-10 minute, sometimes other types of content. So we're used to making it. So that we really fell back on those things and going like, well, how do we approach it? How do we approach shooting for this specific day or for these 12 days? How do we approach it so that we know we can shoot all of this content? And then it's kind of pulling in all the right people to go like, oh, well, if we know we've got an amazing DOP who is Tim Knight, and we go, Tim's on board. I know when I've worked with Tim and Schuman's worked with Tim, Tim doesn't take a lot of time setting up, but he'll make sure it looks beautiful. And again, then we looked at the actors, and the actors were like, I know these actors are like shit hot. So if we put them in there, we don't have to rehearse as much, and they'll probably get it in 1 or 2 takes, which they did. So it was those kind of things. Animation was a whole different thing, where we wouldn't have shot the film if we didn't have an animator in place, because there was
Mm,
so much graphics and it was so ambitious. So when they fell away once we'd finished shooting, was really disheartening. But we kind of got to a point where we'd looked at it and broken it down. Where like Schuman had gone, well, some of the car stuff that's green screen, I'll learn to do that. So I'll put in those moving backgrounds in. So he learned some of that. I was very much like, I don't know any of this stuff. So I was like, well, I'll learn how to do some gunshots and things. So I learned that. And then some of the other ones that are much more complicated, we reached out to people and they got excited and then they fell away, and then someone else got excited and they fell away. And then eventually I found the VFX supervisor, Prakash from India, who's an amazing, really nice guy, and was really excited about the project. And he was very much like, well, we can get on board and help deliver this on the understanding that, you know, our paid work has to take priority over this. And he was willing to do it at a reduced budget. And yeah, we were really, if it wasn't for Prakash and his team, we wouldn't have been able to do the VFX. So those are all like some instances and how we overcame them. But definitely, like a lot of times along the way, we were like, this is never going to happen. What have we done? We wasted our time. But like, yeah, we pulled it off in the end. So
yeah. I mean, in a weird way, right? Do you think this was a good thing, right? Coming up against all of these hurdles, because now I imagine the next project is going to feel like a breeze. You know what I mean? Like, you know how to handle all these situations. You've been able to, you know, overcome. So it's just like, yeah, getting, you know, the next project done, it should be a lot, you know, smoother, right? And
yeah,
it must give you a lot of confidence just within yourself to know I can handle this shit.
yeah, definitely. I mean, there's definitely that a lot. I mean, especially from a graphics point of view of going, this is how we're going to handle it. But the whole thing, I think also from an I think the bigger thing with the previous film that we were trying to get off the ground is like, we can now show investors and go, look, this is what we did. And we did this on no money. And, you know, it's very ambitious and we pulled this off. So I'm hoping that'll be easier. But as far as confidence in ourselves, like, yeah, 100%, definitely in myself. It's like, you know, if I can do this kind of project, if you give me money, it'll make my life a lot easier. Yeah.
Yeah. They say that money don't bring you happiness, but boy, it goes a long way, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I think it would make me a lot happier if I had money for this project, I would have been a lot happier, and I'm sure I will be for the next one. So yeah.
Now, does this sort of experience make you kind of rethink the whole financing angle of a film, right? The way you go about it, maybe the people you approach, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think the big thing for me, which I'd been told before, like if you've got a famous person in your film, it's going to be much easier to sell it, and it'll be much easier to get into the festivals. And that is 100%, like I can see that, because there's no one that's really famous. Vincent Vemignon, who's in it, he's about to be big, but at that point, it didn't help us anyway. So I think from a financing point of view, there's definitely that side of it of going, okay, this is definitely going to change how we approach it. 100% need someone that can sell the film. But I think the other thing is, we're in the process at the moment talking to distributors and we're busy selling it. And it's hard to say at this point, look, it's been easy going, but we've had interest already. And I was always told, look, it's going to be very, very difficult to sell your film. But I think we've started getting that interest, which I think was my original feeling, was always, if you've got a really strong story, you've got really strong actors, you've got a strong director, and you've got a strong film, it's going to be much easier to sell the film. And it looks like we're going to make money off this film. And then to be able to go to an investor and go, we've made money. We had nobody famous in it. We've got famous people now. You know we can do it. Like, it makes sense. And I think from my point of view is always that thing of going to an investor and going, realistically, the chances of making money in the movie industry are it's very slim. But when you do, you can make a lot. I do think we've kind of found some kind of recipe where I'd feel confident going to an investor and go, if you put money in, I will make you money back. I'll make your money back and make you more. So making it an attractive investment. So definitely change the way I'd approach them.
But I find that interesting though, right? What people have said to you about, like, if you have without a famous a person in it, I'm gonna struggle to sell this film. I kind of feel that's more of a case of them just being like, yeah, we're not that great at our job. Because as you said, I feel, and from doing so many different festivals and that kind of thing, you look at the films that are playing, you don't know the people in these films. You gravitate to a good story. If you know someone's like, yo, this film, it's about this, you're just like, what? That sounds insane. I want to see that film. You know what I mean? There's times when, you know what I mean, you have a choice between two films playing at the same time. One might have a few famous people in, the other one sounds like a great story, something different, unique. You gravitate to that. You don't go to the one with all the famous people in. You know what I mean? I don't always think, like, I know it's something that is said a lot, right? Oh, with famous people, you can get financing. And we've seen in the past certain films only got going because certain people came on board. But I do believe a great story can get you so far. You know what I mean? And
Yes,
it's just the ability to sell that story.
yeah, so I'm on the same page as you, Kevin, where it's like if you've got a really strong story and all the elements around it are strong, it becomes that's going to sell it and it's going to get people excited. I think the thing I found, which has been tricky, is to get people to watch it that first time, to be able to get because I mean, I was speaking to a really established festival here in the UK and someone that was running that, and they were really excited about the film and all of that. But then the main thing that I think that they pulled away from for the film was how are we going to get people into the cinema to watch it? But now, as it's gone on at Boston, and you know, we were nominated for awards and won awards, we've got distributors going, okay, well, I want to watch this now. Now I've got a reason to watch it. And now then they watch it, they go, oh, actually, it's really good. And we're interested and we want to put down an offer for the film. But it's that initial thing to go, please watch my film. Where if I had, let's say, Ian McKellen in it, and I go, oh, I've got Ian McKellen in it, they might go, okay, well, I'll watch it. And then if the story sucks, it sucks. It's not going to be a good film. And if it's good, it's going to be a good film. I think it's that initial thing. And yeah, I think the movie lovers like yourself and me, I don't necessarily watch something, and maybe there are one or two actors that I really love that I'll watch a film for, but the rest of it, like, it comes down to the story, and if I've heard good things about it, I'm like, okay, that's my kind of film, I watch it. I don't really care as much about who's in it. But I think people are approaching it, it is the movie business, and they're approaching it like a business, and they go,
Yeah.
well, you've got a name, tick, and if it's about this, tick, and if it's a horror film with zombies, tick, then we're going to sell it easier. And I think that's the approach everyone's taking, and I can kind of see why they do. I don't necessarily agree all the time though. So
Yeah. So what do you do, right, to bridge that gap, right? Because look, I'm sure you've seen dreadful trailers, right, that give you away so much of the story, and it's just like, what do we do? Or sometimes they even make you think the film is a different genre, or you know what I mean, just crammed of laughs, and then you watch the film and you're like, that's not the trailer, right?
yeah,
So how do you create a calling card, right, that you can give to people and that tells them and entices them to see the film? Like, did you have to change your thinking of a trailer, of promotion, to, you know what I mean, bridge the gap of getting people to pay notice of you?
I think for us it was a matter of going, we believe in it. We believe in our story here. We believe in what we've got. We believe we got a strong trailer, and someone will bite. And when somebody starts biting, and more people want to bite, and then it's like, okay, people are interested. So we believed in it. We believed in. Well, I got a really good company to do our poster that again are friends of mine, and it's like already the poster's like you'll see it and you go, okay, wow, that doesn't look like a low budget cheap film. That it kind of separates us from everyone else already. So there were certain elements that we thought, okay, well, if this looks good and our trailer's strong, that should be enough to do it. And again, like I'm not a fan of giving away the whole story anyway, but there should be enough to be able to go, okay, I get an essence of what this film's about. For me, my favorite trailers are ones that I go, okay, I want to watch more. Like I want to watch
Mm.
more of that. And I think a lot of the films that are doing well, even the big Hollywood blockbuster ones. I mean, I have a look at like the Batman that's doing really good now. They got all this hype, obviously, because it's the Batman. It's got famous people in it. But I'm trying to think. I haven't actually seen a trailer for any of that gives away the whole story. The films that I find that I end up don't liking are the ones that have to rely on, or well, give the whole story away so that nobody's disappointed when they come in and watch the film.
Yeah.
Films that I think are really strong, a lot of the time they might just outline a little bit of the story and the relationships that you go, okay, I get what it's about. Let me go and watch it. So yeah, I don't know. I believe that if it's strong through word of mouth and all of that, it'll shine. Like yeah.
Mm. Yeah. No, definitely. And how did you create the chemistry? With the characters and everything like that. Like, were you able to get them to hang out for a period of time before shooting started, or was it just a case of, all right, these are two professionals, let's just hope they can make it work?
Well, there was rehearsal, a bit of rehearsal, so there was that. I think what was lucky about with this is, I mean, both actors, Gary and Amelia, are amazing actors. So, like, I knew that they would bring that, but that chemistry there, I think Amelia's character's an agent is quite cut off emotionally, is quite cold and blunt and all of that, and that is, I think, probably an easier thing to capture with somebody that you don't know, to play that coldness and all of
Mm,
that, which she did incredibly well. And Gary also, his character starts off very much like he's drunk, he's aggressive, he's not a very pleasant guy. So you're asking people to bring a chemistry that's like, and to the film that's like, you don't like this person, you don't get on with them, you kind of hate them being around you, which is not as hard to lean on as to go, look, you're lovers, you've loved each other forever. So there's that kind of chemistry. I think that was easier to develop. And then also, luckily, some of the more intimate scenes, I mean, there's no love relationship, but there's definitely a connection. um, by the time we were probably 4 days in, we were shooting some of those more intimate scenes, and they'd had the rehearsals, and then during the filming time, they'd developed that relationship. But I think the other thing is like I know both of them from before, and they're really great people, and everyone on the crew and the team are really nice, good people. And I like working with. I don't like working with difficult like people. Then they're all really nice. So I knew that you put nice people together, everybody's going to get on. So yeah, I think they just naturally got on with each other because they're both really decent, lovely people. So.
mm, mm. And how do you keep people focused on set, especially when you're having to do long days because you've only got this period of time in which you're doing it? Is there music? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what do you do? Create little sensory rooms? Like, how do you keep that vibe going?
Well, it's a weird one. With this, we were so tight on time that it was like we couldn't really stop. We'd obviously stopped for lunch, so people had their lunch. And I think it's like a two-way thing really, where Claire, the other producer, she's really great at making everything very personal and giving everybody, like, people had certain meal requests. She always made sure that the production manager was getting them specific meals, making sure that if somebody had a problem at any point along the way, they would go to Claire. For some reason, they didn't go to me. Maybe I'm not very approachable when we're shooting. But Claire's very approachable. She comes up with all these problem solving. I tend to get more panicky. I'm like, okay, we got to keep to a specific deadline. So I think the two of us working together, I was really driving people in a very hard way, and she was driving them in a much more kind, approachable way. And at times, each kind of method worked. But yeah, I definitely think the credit goes to Claire on that, keeping everybody positive and on track, because she's just so lovely, and everybody really opens up to her. So they kept positive the whole way through. So.
Okay, oh, that's cool. That's cool. Now with this film, right? Because it's sci-fi, but we don't have a load of crazy gadgets or anything like that. Now, when you're creating it, like, what is that thought process of, okay, how far in the future do we want to kind of show? Like, what do we want to show? The advancements of technology, and like, how do you kind of coalesce that in your mind, thinking as well in the fact of, okay, visually we're going to confine the film to this sort of thing. So how do we, within this scope, show that it's sci-fi?
Yeah, so I think that's a really good question, man. I think there's several things. So you've got, like, I'm not a fan of, sometimes I am in sci-fi. I'm much more of I like sci-fi that has like you question yourself or the world that you live in, rather than going like, well, we've got aliens in this film, but the aliens look like humans. So and I think there's certain people in the world that believe that they're aliens living amongst us. I'm not one of those people, but like, it kind of goes, okay, so we already solved one problem. Our aliens are all going to look like humans. They're not going to look any different. But I think, like, for me, it's like the bigger scale stuff that you can actually go like, well, the professor talks about, okay, we've brought mankind all of their technology, from mobile phones to electricity, their race gave them all of this. So immediately you go, well, like, everything that we know has been given to us by this alien race. So that kind of immediately captures the, well, like, their technology must look very similar to ours, or at least they controlling everything around us, everything that we see that's man-made has been given to us by these aliens. And then I think, for me, the bigger ones, where we go, okay, well, we need some graphics on this, where we go like, well, if there's going to be a device, rather than like a ray gun or something like that, or like a big cannon or something crazy, or a big spaceship, like, let's make something so powerful that it's kind of insane, where you go, well, this guy's put a black hole inside a cube, and he's managed to put this, and it's harnessed all this energy. Or he carries his device, which he calls a senai, which can manipulate all matter around him and make things appear and reappear and change the way things operate. And part of his soul exists inside this object. So many immediately becomes like, oh wow, that's kind of a cool object that's never existed before. And of course, it's going to come from an alien race that's so advanced. And then you have the beginning of the film, where you've got this pyramid building, and, well, why would people travel through a spaceship? Well, maybe it would be more something, I think something a bit like Stargate, where you go, well, what's a cool way for somebody to come here? They get beamed in from a bit of light, and a temple forms out of nowhere. It just comes into existence, and a guy walks out. So I think for me, it was going, we don't want things to be too linear and be like, well, if we've got a weapon, let's make it look like a gun. And if we've got a way to travel, let's make it look like a spaceship. Let's like move away from that, but let's keep it quite, big. And then I think also, as I was saying, is the sci-fi thing for me is going, good sci-fi kind of questions our existence as human beings, and rather than, like, obscure alien stuff. So I thought, well, if he's got his soul inside this device, so he's had to sacrifice part of himself and put it in this, and it starts to become more interesting, and you start to question that. And then when he uses it, there's the possibility of his soul dying and all of that kind of thing, so it becomes more existential.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, man. That makes it. And like, where do you draw your inspiration from? Like to, create these stories?
I have to say, for me, like I watch a lot of TV and I watch a lot of movies, but for me, I think there's not a specific thing that I would draw from. Like, I very much believe as an artist, whatever you're exposed to has some effect on your subconscious and you pull inspiration from there. But I think from a more conscious perspective, not that I've pulled anything specifically from any bit of art, but I would definitely say like a Japanese anime for me. I watch a lot of anime, and I'm also interested in being like the Western stories seem to follow a very specific pattern that you can
Yeah.
find. And I found at least the Japanese side of things, they, whether it's different to me because it's from a different culture, but it's a pattern that I'm not as used to, and it really excites me more. So I prefer to draw inspiration from something far from me rather than going, well, I'm going to draw inspiration from, let's say, Blade Runner, which is
Mm.
a great film. I'd prefer to draw inspiration from somewhere else and go, actually, this is far away from what people or what I'm usually used to. And yeah, I think most of it would probably come from like, yeah, Japanese anime is like a heavy like inspiration for me.
Okay. Well, see, I've got to ask now. What anime would you recommend? Because I I struggle with it, right? There's some stuff that I really that man, as a kid, there was this one about four guys and they would turn into dragons. It was something like the four dragon kings or something like that, and that was awesome. But some of the other stuff I just can't always get into. Like, so give me some good recommendations for anime.
Well, I'd say like, are you, is there specific genre you did like really like into fantasy or sci-fi or like thriller stuff? Like what?
I ain't just good stories, man. If it's
So
a good story, I'm gonna check it out.
So if it's about story, I would say definitely like a really solid one is Death Note, and I don't watch the movies very different, like because there was a Western movie made, but there's
Yeah, Netflix dropped it a few years back. Yeah, I saw the Netflix movie, which not the best. I believe they're doing a TV series.
yeah, so that would make more sense to me. Like I would definitely say watch the anime though, because it's a really complicated story, and you can't really capture it in a movie. You don't have enough
Hmm,
time to see it all. So Death Note's really amazing. I
okay.
think one of my favorite is Berserk. I really love it. It's a little bit like kind of Game of Thronesy, but like I
Ooh,
think the relationships in it are really exciting in there. And then if like you were saying, there was one that you watched where they were like dragons and these guys a really good, another good one is Bleach is really good. Like it
okay.
starts the slow one, it probably takes about quite a few episodes to get into it, but it's got quite a lot of fantasy and people with like swords and all of this stuff, but it's very like with all of these things, I think all of them start to feel quite childish at the beginning, and there's quite a
Hmm,
lot of exposition because they explain story, but then when you get into it, it very quickly becomes very adult like, where the relationships are more complex. There's a lot, not that I'm leaning on the violent, but the battles are important and the relationships are really key in all of them. I really think like the way some of the animes catch the relationships where you like somebody dies and I'm almost in tears. Maybe I'm just a big nerd, but like
no, that's good. Because I have to say, it is that childish element that does put me off a lot of the times when what I mean, they're doing this thing and then they start being like, "Oh, you got a big nose," and it's just like, "Yo, just give me the story, man. Let's cut this shit out."
exactly. Well, those ones, they don't have any of those elements in it. There's a really good one which is called Metal Gear Solid, and that's done really well. But I was very turned off by it because every like 10 minutes they change the way it's drawn and it becomes very childish, and they get like big red cheeks and they're like, "Oh, why are you talking to me like that?" And you're like,
Uh,
"What?" It really pulls focus. But those ones I recommended, they don't do that at all. So yeah, they're like Yeah, there's none of that. Like,
Okay, so Death
yeah,
Note, Bleach, and what was the other one?
Berserk.
Berserk.
Berserk's a really, really good one. It takes a bit of time. Like, it feels a little bit like the old Conan films.
Oh, okay.
Barbarian starts like that. I mean, it's essentially one guy with a really massive sword who goes around and he's unstoppable, but he has very detailed relationships and and not giving away stuff, but there's a whole like demon realm that starts coming into Earth and all of that. So,
Hmm.
but it's good. It takes a bit of time to get into, and it go with the longer series because there've been remakes of it and like shorter films and that. But like, there's a longer series. I think it was from like the 80s or 90s, and they're like 27 episodes. And if you get into that, then read the manga because that's really good. Yeah, I really enjoy that stuff.
Okay, well, you sold me, man. You sold me. I'm
Yeah.
gonna check those out. Thank you, Steve. I
Yeah,
appreciate
no problem.
it. All right, so yeah, you're doing the festivals, right? You're close to distribution.
We're getting close. We're in the busy chatting to a producer's rep at the moment that wants to come on board, and we're just busy looking at contracts. And hopefully, I don't really want to mention their name yet, just because we haven't signed
Yeah,
with them.
yeah.
But if we do, they're very well connected, and they think that they've got a lot of distributors who are really keen to pick it up. We've been chatting to some distributors. I mean, to be honest, our plan wasn't really to approach distributors or sales agents at this point, but because of Boston, this producer's rep and some distributors came straight to us, and they've gone, "Oh, look, we've had an offer put down already, but we kind of want to see what happens with all of them." But yeah, yeah, really exciting time. So fingers crossed it'll come together smoothly, and we'll get some good offers on the table, and then get good distribution. For us, really, the key is to get, rather than trying to make as much money, it's trying to get as much exposure as possible. Because
Mm,
I think the other thing with the film is like, I think the market is, if you're really into sci-fi, I think you'd love it. And if you're a filmmaker and you're into making films, you'll also love it because you'll see it's really ambitious. And like, I really believe we've our team's made a really good job of something that doesn't look like a no budget film. It looks like a lot more than that. So I think that's the audience it's sitting towards. And then I think from a long term point of view, is it's the kind of sci-fi I'm hoping that it will kind of build more hype. The longer it's been out there, where if you're into sci-fi, you'll be like, "Oh, you go and watch this because there's good story in there, and they're discussing ideas that haven't been discussed before." So yeah, that's the hope. So exposure for me is the most important thing, because from a long-term point of thing of our our career and stuff like that, it'll make more sense. But also, like, if I wanted to make money, I would have gone into a different industry. It's more about telling the story. So yeah.
mm, yeah. Okay, and what have you got many festivals lined up? So, I mean, where can people possibly see you before it hits the wider world?
Well, Miami is the next one. So Miami is, if I'm right, it's on the 20th of March. Yeah, so that's on the 20th. So they can see it there. And then festival wise, we've got a few we're waiting to hear back from, like more festivals, and hopefully there will be one or two in the UK yet. Like, I mean, I would say if people want to see the film and follow us, like, we've got our Facebook page. Go on Facebook, or you can go to our Capital Films page and you can see it on there too, or Twitter, and we're regularly updating people with what's going on with it. So as soon as there's a way for anybody to see it, they'll hear about it. So we're busy pushing Miami at the moment, but if we get into more festivals, we'll push those and let people know where to see it. Otherwise, they'll have to wait for when we get distribution to see it. So
Okay, man.
yeah.
Well, that's great. What I mean? So people, 20th of March, Miami, make sure you do it. You've got enough reason to go, not just the sun, right? It's beyond
Yeah.
existence.
Exactly.
Hey, Stephen, thank you very much for your time, man. I know
No,
you've
nice
got
one, Kevin.
a busy day, so I'm gonna let you go. But I appreciate you stopping by and giving us a just that insight. I think a lot of first-time directors, writers, I think they're gonna find some interesting kernels in what you said, man. So thank you, I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for the time. It's been really great speaking to you. So yeah, it's been a really nice one.
Hey, no worries at all, man. All the success. Hope Miami goes well. And yeah, good luck with that distribution deal, my friend.
Cheers, Kevin. Appreciate it, man.
All right, you take it easy and come back next time with
Will
your
do.
next project. All right.
Will do. Nice one, Kevin. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Stephen.